Peegs.com, Jared Kelly, Matt Weaver, 2 days out from Indiana football spring practice, the first under new head coach Kurt Cignetti. Let's start with offense here, Matt. Obviously, there's a lot of changes here. Probably, you're gonna have new faces all across the field: offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, running back, the likes. We'll start at quarterback here. This is Tino Sinceri's bread and butter. We got Curtis Rourke, Ohio transfer. Taven Jackson's also going to be in the mix. Tyler Cherry was obviously the coveted four-star that they got late in the recruiting cycle. This is a really fascinating quarterback room going into spring camp, and Kurt Cignetti has said, nothing is guaranteed. Everybody thinks Curtis Rourke is going to be the odds-on favorite to be the starter, but it should be kind of fascinating to see how these guys develop under Tino Sinceri.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good. I think this quarterback room is as good as Indiana's had in a long time. Obviously Rourke is a proven player, and I know people are kind of down on Taven, but Taven Jackson has talent.
Yeah.
And he had multiple OCs. Kind of played in, I won't say two different systems, but had two different play callers. So I like to see him get with the guy and kind of get rebuilt a little bit. And obviously you mentioned Tyler Cherry's got a ton of talent, and then Brock Lowry is a guy that showed some things last year in spring ball, and we got to see him. Athletic guy, so I think it's a good quarterback room. You've got experience, you've got young players, you got guys who have different skill sets. So it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, I think the smart money would be on Curtis Rourke to win the job. That's why you usually bring in a guy like that. But when we sat down with Coach Cignetti in his office about a month ago, or a little less than a month ago, he made it very clear: nobody's anointed, there's no entitlement. Every position is wide open. Competition is the name of the game, and so Curtis Rourke's gonna have to go out there and win it. It would, to me, it wouldn't be shocking if a Taven Jackson was right up there, or maybe even a Tyler Cherry or somebody else. But I think Curtis Rourke is the odds-on favorite to win it if he performs like they expect him to.
Mm. Now that we've had a couple months kind of with this new staff, I don't know if you had a ton of time to watch, James Madison film or kind of talk to people. Do you have any feel for how this offense might run with these quarterbacks and maybe the type of quarterback they're looking for? Because obviously, Curtis Rourke ran a little bit at Ohio. Tyler Cherry wasn't a huge runner in high school. Taven Jackson, obviously not a huge runner either. But, the quarterbacks I had at James Madison, it looked like they're, kind of amendable to their skill sets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Curtis and I talked about that when we were in his office. He talked about how for a while he was kind of under center with his quarterback when he was, I think, at IU Pennsylvania, and then he got more of an athletic guy. And this is kind of when Oregon and Chip Kelly were kind of doing all that stuff out there, and so he kind of adjusted. And I think I think what I like most about Coach Ignetti is he can adjust to his personnel, and that's what good coaches do. I mean, Rourke is a guy that especially with this receiver crew. I know we'll talk about receivers, but this is a really deep receiver room with a lot of guys who can make plays. I think you're going to try to spread the field, and let him do what he does best, which is throw the football. But he can run, like you said, a little bit. He showed a little bit at Ohio. I think all these guys, I don't think any of them are statues. Some are, Brock Lowry's probably the most athletic. I think they can all make some plays with their feet, but you're probably not going to have a Tyler Cherry or Curtis Rourke keep the ball 8 to 10 times a game and run with it. Now, if something breaks down, he can scramble out, then so be it. But I think the offense will be adjusted to what their strengths are. And right now, to me, their strengths are at the skill positions between receiver and running back, guys who can make plays. Get the ball to them and let them make plays.
Mm. Before we get to those skill positions, I did want to ask one more thing about the quarterbacks. I think maybe one of the more fascinating position battles, maybe not be starting quarterback. Curtis Rourke, obviously the favorite there, but the backup, the top backup, Taven Jackson, Tyler Cherry. Obviously, the staff went really hard after Cherry as soon as they got to campus, and they must see a lot in him. And then Taven Jackson got really valuable starting experience last year. But this is obviously a new staff, a new scheme that he'll have to learn. With those two, do you think, obviously Jackson has the experience advantage, but do you think Cherry, just with his talent, how much the staff pursued him, do you think that might give him a leg up in the mix too?
Well, I mean, I think what helps Tyler Cherry is you got a brand new staff with a brand new system, and you're starting from the same point as everybody else. Now, not from an experience standpoint, but from a knowledge of the system and as their coaching. So I think he has got a great chance. I think any of those guys have a great chance. Let's just kind of assume, probably shouldn't, but kind of assume Rourke wins the job. I think the other three all have a great shot to move into that number two. And I think Indiana fans know better than anybody that you need more than one quarterback. I mean, that's been kind of the story of this program at that position for the last number of years, going all the way back to what 21, when well, even before that, when they were rotating Michael Penix and Peyton Ramsey. So you're going to need that guy. That guy's going to have to be ready to play, whoever it is. But I think Tyler Cherry. It would not be at all shocking to me if he's the number two guy. Just like it wouldn't be shocking if Taven Jackson's. I think you made a great point. That's going to be the starting quarterback's going to be everybody's eyes on that, but that backup one is going to be really interesting to watch as well.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, they're gonna have to hand the ball off to somebody back there, and there's gonna be a ton of new faces. I'm still not convinced that all of them are going to stick around past spring camp, but obviously, competition is what Kurt Cignetti wants, and that's exactly what he brought in this spring. Indiana going into spring camp with 7 scholarship running backs. Obviously, Kobe Martin won't be here till later on in the summer, but you get Trent Holland back from the portal, keep David Holloman, bring in 4 running backs from the portal. When you look at this list, Matt, this is obviously an impressive running back room. A lot of experience here, a lot of production. Are there any guys that stand out to you going into spring camp, and guys who might, kind of rise up the depth chart?
Well, obviously, Howland flashed last year. I thought he did a good job when he got his opportunity. We haven't seen basically anything of David Holloman as a running back. He showed a little bit a couple years ago as a kick returner. The speed's there. The guys that I'm kind of intrigued by are the 2 guys from JMU, just because they know the system. The coaches know them. So Kalon Black, who had some impressive production there, and also I think it's Tyson Lawton, if I remember his name right. But Justin Ellison's another guy. He's got some burst to him. Played obviously at a Power 5 school at Wake Forest, so it's and then Elijah Green comes from North Carolina. He's kind of the forgotten guy because he was just so late, and it was really kind of shocking. But this is not based on any kind of source thing. I'm with you. I think it's kind of unrealistic to expect all these guys to be on the roster come fall camp, because it's not like receiver where you can rotate 7 or 8 guys. Running back, you're probably going 3, maybe 4 deep, assuming there's no injury. So there's going to be a guy or 2 that's going to be kind of left out, and it's just does he, especially if he's only got a year or 2 left in college, does he want to stick around when he can maybe go somewhere else, get playing time? But it's a good problem to have. I mean, too much competition is never a bad thing. So that's going to be an interesting position, just because, like I said, you can only play so many of them, and who kind of emerges, from that group.
Mm-hmm. What are there any guys that right away you're pegging as this guy's definitely going to be here past the spring? Just based on your own opinion of what you've seen of them.
Well, I mean, I think the guys. I mean, you kind of. I shouldn't. I mean, the guys from JMU, I think, are probably got a pretty good bet to stick.
Yeah.
I would assume Howland, but he was going to leave. He came back. If some of these new guys happen to pass him by in the spring, is he a guy that could be maybe have his eyes elsewhere? I'm not saying he will. I'm just saying he's already shown that he was looking elsewhere at one point. Allison, I think he brings a little bit. He seems to bring a little bit different skill set maybe than some of the other guys. Not way different, but I just watching him on film, I do like his burst. I like some of the highlights I saw of him. Elijah Green, I just he didn't play a ton. I think it was last year. He's had some playing time, but I think he was banged up. So it's so hard to predict who might stay and who might not stay. But that's where we'll get on the field, and we'll find out. I mean, to me, David Holloman is a guy that to me looks like the odd man out. And I'm not trying to say he doesn't have a chance, but he hasn't gotten on the field so far. And obviously, there's been opportunities for him to play in Indiana before this. Now it's a new staff. Maybe they find something in him that the other staff for some reason couldn't or didn't. So I don't want to count anybody out, but I would say he's to me would be kind of the odd man out with all the guys they brought in. Keeping Howland and all the guys they brought in the portal.
Yeah. So 7 scholarship running backs. New running backs coach John Miller will be have to sort through this spring. Obviously, not an easy decision there, but competition is ultimately what Indiana has needed for the last several years. Let's move on to wide receiver here, Matt. This is a room that is as deep as anybody can remember Indiana having. Just so much talent here that they brought in, so much talent that they got back, and Donovan McCulley, EJ Williams, Cameron Perry, Omar Cooper. And then you got, you're bringing guys like Elijah Surratt, who was terrific last year, James Madison, Miles Price, Keyshawn Williams. I mean, when you look at this wide receiver room, it is really going to be just an absolute all-out competition for snaps to even get on the field next year.
Yeah, this is probably the deepest wide receiver room that I can remember since covering this program. I mean, I think back to the days of when they had Cody Latimer and Kofi Hughes, Shane Wynn, and Deweese Wilson. Those top four guys were all pretty good, but you've even got more than that. Now I don't know that there's Cody Latimer. That last year at Indiana was phenomenal. I mean, he was drafted I think third round. He was a phenomenal player. I'm not sure there's anybody at that level right now. But I think from top to bottom, it's a better wide receiver room than that season for under Kevin Wilson. Obviously, Don McCauley is kind of the alpha dog in that room, just what he did, especially the second half of last year. But you mentioned Surratt. I think the one thing in coaching that I think I put this one story. One thing you mentioned is do you have that guy who can really take the top off the defense? You would think maybe Anderson Kobe, but he's not. His production really fell off last year after showing a little bit when he first came in 2 years ago. So, maybe if you could find that guy, there may be some guys who can do that, but they've got some big bodies. They've got some small. I like the different sizes, like you look at a Miles Price or a Keyshawn Williams, Cameron Perry, a little bit more slot type guys. You got McCauley, who's big, EJ Williams, who's big. Even Surratt's got some good size to him. So I like it. I mean, these are guys who have proven production. I know you've done stuff on it and talked about it. I mean, this is a incredibly productive room that they have at wide receiver. So it should be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. One of the guys I think is getting kind of underrated here is Omar Cooper.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of new faces, a lot of veteran senior faces coming in here. But he's a guy who flashed a lot last year, and the fact that he did stick around, when he could have gone to the portal after Indiana brought in all these new additions, kind of speaks to his confidence in himself, and maybe what the staff kind of sees in him too.
Absolutely, and it's a shame because I think it was the Penn State game, and there were some other moments, but the Penn State game he had that big touchdown late, and he really showed his athleticism and what people liked about him, what the former staff liked about him. So it was tough that he got hurt, but I think he's an incredibly talented guy. I think he's got a really high ceiling. There's a lot of guys in front of him, but this is one of those situations where you hope a guy can kind of see, even if he's not getting as many snaps this year as maybe he was hoping to. They're losing a ton of guys out of this wide receiver. I mean, they're probably going to hit the portal pretty heavy again in the next class for receivers. But he's going to be a guy that they could build their passing game around, or be one of the guys that can build the passing game around going into 25. I know we're talking about 24, but just he is a guy I've always liked. Omar, I got to watch him in high school multiple times. And he's great kid and a really talented player. So and just because they brought these guys in doesn't mean they're going to play. I mean, if he's one of the guys, and I think they're going to rotate. I remember Kevin Wilson always told me I want to play 7 or 8 guys. They play fast. You're running guys. You need guys with fresh legs. So you look at that. He could be one of those 7 or 8 guys and still have a chance to make a big impact this fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be no shortage of competition there in the wide receiver room. Will be really interesting to see if they end up putting out a 2 deep, who kind of emerges across those 3 different wide receiver spots. They could even go spread 4 wide receivers, 5 receivers at a time on the field. So definitely a lot of options there. At tight end here, Matt. I went into it kind of thinking. I wasn't really sure what to think of this position group. The more I look at it, though, there is some nice pieces there, especially the returners, the veterans. Obviously, they brought in Zach Horton from James Madison, who's familiar with Mike Shanahan's offensive system, and then you get Trey Walker back, you get James Bamba back, Brody Foley, Anthony Miller, Sam West, and then true freshman Brody Cosin, who I like a lot. That is I wouldn't say a super strong tight end room, but you got some pieces there to work with for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Horton was all conference in the Sun Belt. He's a good player. To me that they don't. I'm not sure how much they're going to play 2 tight ends. They seem more like a 10 personnel type of offense where it's like you mentioned 4 wide receivers. But the tight end will be used, and obviously they've got a known commodity in Zach Horton. It's just you got to develop some depth there. James Baum has played, Trey Walker's played, but then after that, I'm with you. I am a big fan of Brody Cosin. I think it's awesome that he's on campus now and will be going through spring ball. I think that's really big for him. I think he's I mean, Texas came in and offered him late.
Yeah.
If you remember back in, I think it was right before signing day, and so they were able to hang on to him. And I think that kid's got a really bright future. We'll see. Sam West is a guy that got a little bit of playing time, and I know the former staff liked him, and you still got Brody Foley. So it's just who can you're going to need two or three guys. It's a physical position because he's got to block. That guy's got to block sometimes, and there's injuries are part of the game. So developing that depth, and then not so much just the blocking. Can you find another pass catcher besides Zach Horton? I mean, he can't be the guy that runs all the routes at tight end for you. So can somebody step up and be a guy who can make some plays in the passing game, other than him?
Mhm. Yeah, it'll be interesting there how just see even how they use those tight ends. But a lot of competition too to obviously get on the field past Zach Horton. Let's go to the offensive line here, Matt. This is obviously one area that Indiana remained I guess brought in continuity from last year with Bob Bostad staying, and then obviously they got Mike Kadick back from the NFL draft. He previously said he was going to go enter, and now he is back. You also get the huge return of Carter Smith, who was in the portal, had tons of Power Five offers, pretty much could have gone anywhere he wanted, and obviously IU was able to get him back. When you look at this offensive line room and everything they brought in, it's got to be really promising. With Bostad leading it.
Yeah, I think this is a sneaky, strong position for IU. And I say sneaky just because it's been so obviously such an Achilles heel for this program for a number of years in a row, last 3 or 4 years. So you get back obviously, and we've done. They lost a lot. They lost a bunch of guys left, and you thought Kadick was going to go pro. You get Carter Smith back. Kadick decides not to stay in the NFL draft. You had Trey Weddick from Wisconsin, and then the two JMU guys, Kidwell and Stevens. Kidwell's had a knee injury, so he'll be limited in spring ball. But he's a really experienced player. So is Stevens. To me, I think you kind of got, I don't want to say this is going to be the starting five, but I think, some combination of Weddick, Kidwell, Stevens, Carter Smith, and then Mike Kadick. The key is, any offensive line coach, and Kirk Snag said this in office, you need to have 8 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, when I talked to Greg Fry, he'd always say, it's not 5, because obviously I'd love to have 10. He said, I need a minimum of 8. That's what I need. I need 8 guys I can count on that is something, I can play them. So finding those other 3 guys, is it going to be Noah Boltikoff, Vinny Fiacable, could one of these younger guys, I know Barrett, was it Austin Barrett was a guy that they really liked the previous staff. So can one of these younger guys, step up? Bray Lynch has gotten some playing time. So finding that depth is going to be important. But I do like their starting 5. And if they can keep that unit together, as cohesive and hopefully keep them injury free, I think they got a chance to be a pretty good O-line.
Mm-hmm. With this new offense coming in, Mike Shanahan obviously bringing his own style of play. Do you think it changes anything? Maybe how they might want to line this offensive line up to the best 5 on the field.
Um, as far as the offensive line.
Yeah, just schematically, maybe obviously last year was super run heavy, and they're obviously super in the trenches, and wanted to open up those running lanes. And this year might be looks like it's gonna be a lot more of a pass heavy spread offense.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, and to me, to be that goes to strength and conditioning, how they're going to reshape some of their bodies. I'm no expert. I thought Indiana's linemen maybe got a little bit maybe too heavy with the previous staff and weren't moving as well. I mean, if you go back to when Kevin Wilson was here and they played quick, I mean, they had Dan Feeney and his name's the left tackle. But those guys could get out and pull. They can move. They almost look like the tackles almost kind of look like big tight ends. So to me, getting the 5, you want the 5 best guys, but try to get the best athletes out there that you can. The 5 most athletic guys who can, because you're going to be in space more, especially if you're not going to use the tight end a lot. You're going to have guys who can move. Obviously, in the Big Ten, the D ends are really, really, really good, especially when you're playing some of those bigger schools. So, I'll be interested to see what the body shapes look like. I mean, we're not going to get to see a ton of practice, but we'll get to see a little bit. And when IU, I assume they'll update the roster this week. I don't know. Has the weights changed? And that doesn't always tell the whole story, but and then how do you move guys around? Kidwell's played tackle and guard. Stevens played tackle and guard. Kadix played. He could play all three interior positions. Weddick has played all basically center, guard, and tackle. So, I think Carter Smith is the one guy I would probably put in Pence or in Penn at left tackle. The other four, I would write those guys down. I'm not sure I'd write them down in Penn as far as being in the lineup. I'm just not sure I'd write them in Penn as far as a position. So that'll be interesting to see. And obviously Kidwell, we won't know until the fall when he gets back to 100%. So it'll be interesting to see how they move guys around. Obviously, Bostad's one carryover, so I don't think it's going to be a ton of change, but how they do their offense may force him to kind of adjust or alter maybe how he was going to do things this year.
Mm-hmm. It'll definitely be a fun spring to watch from the offensive side of the ball. We'll see how those guys develop and how those depth charts kind of take form.